Good morning. Today in Israel, Hamas fired a rocket into Israeli territory, but was met with a swift response by the IDF. A Palestinian flag was planted by Arab vandals at a memorial to fallen soldiers in the Golan Heights. The IDF thwarted yet another attempt to smuggle weapons into Israel from Jordan. There will likely be a vote in the Knesset on whether or not to dissolve the current government, and a decade-long boycott of the Ariel University was ended. I'm Josiah, and this is the Israel Guys Daily. Welcome to the Israel Guys Daily, where we cut through the fog of fake news to bring you the accurate headlines from Israel. Good morning, guys, and welcome to the Israel Guys Daily on YouTube. If this is the first time watching or listening to the Israel Guys Daily, make sure and check out our podcast. We're coming to you every day, Monday through Friday, with the accurate headlines from Israel. So go to the podcast platforms. We're on all of them. You can find the links in the description below, and make sure and catch up on what is actually happening inside of Israel. As the world is filled with fake news and propaganda against Israel, our mission is to bring you the truth and the headlines straight from the source. That's why we're broadcasting to you straight from the heartland of Israel. We are located in Samaria. What is happening in Israel today, and what has happened over the weekend here? First off, on Friday, actually late Friday night, more like early Saturday morning, I guess, Hamas fired a rocket into Israel. Thankfully, the rocket was intercepted by the Iron Dome and was not hit, didn't fall in any population centers, and nobody was injured. But the IDF did respond with a very quick military strike in Gaza. In response, the IAF, the Israel Air Force, targeted weapons manufacturing facility inside of Gaza, and also struck 3 military posts belonging to Hamas. These strikes were by aircraft and by tank and took place several hours after the rocket fire on Saturday. After it got light, I think the rocket was like at 3 a.m. or something like that. So the IDF responded a little bit later in the day, but they struck a weapons manufacturing facility and also 3 Hamas posts inside the Gaza Strip. One of them actually overlooked a kibbutz, Jewish kibbutz outside of the Gaza Strip, the kibbutz Nativ HaAsara, on the northern border, and one of the ones they struck. And I actually saw a video of it on Twitter. Pretty crazy. The IDF just went in there, shot it with a rocket or some sort of ground-to-ground missile, and obliterated the post. Another terrorist post was destroyed there as well. And actually later in the day, on Saturday, machine gun fire was also fired from that same post into the kibbutz there on the northern border. And actually a bullet entered a home inside the kibbutz. Thank God it did not hit anybody. Thank God nobody was injured, but it did hit the house and cause material damage there. The IDF sent in a statement about the attack from Gaza in their response. They said, quote, "The IDF holds the Hamas terrorist organization responsible for all terror activity emanating from the Gaza Strip." Also, Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister of Israel, responded or addressed the incident in his opening remarks to his cabinet on Sunday morning. He said, "On Friday night, we attacked and destroyed weapons manufacturing facilities and several other Hamas terrorist targets in Gaza. This is the response to the firing of a single rocket from the Gaza Strip, which was intercepted by the Iron Dome." Now, Bennett also took the opportunity in his cabinet to point out what a good job he's doing with security, according to him, and why there's been quiet this year. He said that there was only 7 rockets shot into Israel in the last year, which makes it the quietest year on record since 2005, when the Jewish state evacuated Gaza in 2005. And according to Bennett, this is because this quiet that we've seen in the rockets from Gaza and Hamas is because of their policies, this government's policies. He said in his cabinet, he said, quote, When this government was established, we changed our policy toward Hamas in several dimensions. We immediately stopped the transfer of suitcases of dollars to Hamas and moved from a policy of accepting rocket fire on Israelis to one of zero tolerance. Now, obviously, this is very one-sided, pro his government and anti the previous government in here, because he's saying they moved from a policy of accepting rocket fire on Israelis to one of zero tolerance. And we know that's Netanyahu did not have a policy of accepting rocket fire. But basically, he's just saying that their government's doing a much better job. It's not exactly entirely true what he's saying here about his government, and this is the main reason. It could be a factor, definitely could be a factor of their policy of striking straight back. But I would say probably the biggest factor, if not, a big factor, if not the biggest factor, was that just over a year ago, when Hamas fired 4,000 rockets into Israel, in the IDF responded with Operation Guardian of the Walls. They struck Hamas in the Gaza Strip pretty hard. They struck multiple military targets. They struck weapons facilities, weapons storage places. They even took out Hamas headquarters, the terrorist headquarters, as well as neutralizing many Hamas terrorists as well. And we've seen in the past that after such a response from the IDF of actually going in and cleaning house, basically, it greatly cripples the Hamas organization. So that is a very big factor in all this, the quiet we've seen over the last year, is that the Hamas organization is crippled and very weakened by the strike Israel went in and cleaned house after Hamas, unprovoked, fired over 4,000 rockets into Israel last year in the 11-day conflict we saw. So that's a big factor there. Also, we have seen, it is true, over the past several weeks, or past several months, whenever a rocket has been fired from Hamas into Israel, that this government and the military has met it with a very swift response from the IDF, the Air Force here in Israel. They have done that. So that is true as well. Moving up north in the Golan Heights, actually, a Palestinian flag was placed, and actually they replaced a Palestinian flag They replaced an Israeli flag, for a Palestinian flag at a memorial to fallen soldiers in the Golan Heights. The site is located close to Kibbutz Ein Zivan and honors the 36th Division's 134th Reconnaissance Battalion who fought in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. So this is a memorial to fallen soldiers in the Golan Heights. And Arab vandals over the weekend came in, took down the Israeli flag. There's actually a flagpole right there by the memorial. They took down the Israeli flag and replaced it with a Palestinian flag in blatant defiance against the state of Israel. And they actually even videoed what they did. They videoed replacing it and posted that to social media, which angered a lot of Golan residents and residents across the country. Obviously, it's a pretty blatant thing to do here, blatant against these fallen soldiers and against the state of Israel. According to JNS, Amichai Zellinger, a resident of Moshav Yonatan, who lives in the Golan Heights, said he arrived early Sunday morning to restore the Israeli flag to its rightful place. I guess he saw this incident on social media or whatever, but he arrived there early Sunday morning about 5:45, only to find that the flag had already been replaced by the Israeli military. Turns out it was actually a Christian Arab officer who was very, very bothered by the sight of the Palestinian flag at the site of memorializing the fallen IDF soldiers, and he actually replaced it. So we're very thankful to this Christian Arab officer in the IDF who was bothered enough to do something and actually replace it with the rightful Israeli flag, the flag of his country, the one who he is a citizen of and a soldier of the country. Also, the IDF and the Israeli police thwarted weapons smuggling from Jordan. Again, we've seen a lot of this happen in the last several months, but the IDF and Israeli police thwarted the smuggling of 13 weapons in the Arava region of southern Israel. During the night, military observers, in cooperation with the Magan unit in the southern district of Israel, they identified two suspects who were trying to cross with illegal weapons. Thankfully, they called it in. The military and police arrived very quickly. They arrested two suspects that were actually carrying the weapons over and smuggling them into Israel, as well as another suspect who they believed was involved in planning of the operation, who was nearby. So, yes, great. We're very thankful that the IDF and the Israeli police are on high alert, and they have thwarted multiple attempts over the last several weeks and months of Arabs smuggling weapons from Jordan, from Syria, from Lebanon into Israel. And who knows where these weapons were intended, whether they were intended to carry out a terrorist attack in Israel, whether they were intended to go to the Palestinian Authority or to Hamas. Who knows, but thank God they are no longer in the hands of terrorists or in the hands of the terrorist organizations there. Update on the government, like what is happening in the government, just stuff to be looking out for this week. We'll also be reporting later in the week, every day, Monday through Friday. We're reporting on what's happening, and we're giving you what's happening in the government. There's a lot of rumors, again, coming out of Israel. I'm just going to give you the update on here's the possibilities of what's going to happen this week, and here is everything is changing like crazy in the government, and even people in the government don't know exactly what's going to happen day by day. But here's what it looks like right now. The bill I talked about actually last week on the podcast on Wednesday, the bill that the Religious Zionism Party submitted to the Ministerial Committee, which the bill is designed to apply sovereignty to Area C in Judea and Samaria. Now, this would negate the need for the emergency Judea and Samaria law that right now cannot be passed and is about to be expired because the opposition is no longer voting for anything that the coalition puts forward in an attempt to bring down the government. So this bill that the Religious Zionism, Bezalel Smotrich and Orit Struk, very right-wing politicians, they submitted to the Ministerial Committee was rejected by the committee. And so apparently this committee, the Ministerial Committee for Legislation, they have the power to confer coalition backing for the Knesset bills, which would fast-track them in the Knesset plenum when they actually bring the bill forth to all the Knesset members to vote on, to pass it or not to. So basically, it was rejected by the committee, which would have gained it the coalition support. And again, this was in response and as a solution to not passing, to the government not being able to pass the emergency Judea and Samaria law, applying emergency law and temporary Israeli law to Judea and Samaria. Again, this bill would, in theory, apply sovereignty to Area C inside of Judea and Samaria, which would be a great step forward for the state of Israel. But again, very difficult to do in a government that is in coalition with Arab parties. They're not likely to support the applying of sovereignty inside of Judea and Samaria. It is interesting because some critics are saying that Smotrich is likely, so it's possible that he will bring the bill to vote on Wednesday in the Knesset, despite it not passing, the coalition not supporting it, basically, kind of in an effort to embarrass Bennett and his party, because his party has been very right-wing. It's run on a very right-wing ticket, and they have been very pro-sovereignty in the past. So some people are saying that he will bring it to vote, even though it wouldn't pass, but basically kind of to make Bennett publicly say, no, we can't pass this and come against this bill. So that's a possibility. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. There was some rumors about the bill to dissolve the government. The Likud is supposed to present a bill on Wednesday to dissolve the current government. So they would vote on that. There's some rumors that it would be postponed till next week. I'm not exactly sure if it will or not, but as of now, it seems like the Likud is pushing for it to happen this week. And if the bill was passed in the Knesset, if they got a majority on the bill, then the 24th Knesset would be dissolved, the government would be dissolved, and they would head to new elections, I believe, in October. The actual elections would take place in October. Now, what they need to pass this bill is support from MK Nir Orbach, who is Yamina, Yamina is the current government, Bennett's party, and basically Nir Orbach has said that he's not voting with the government anymore. So they need his support. The opposition needs his support for this bill in order to pass it and dissolve the government. We're not sure if he's going to support it or not. It seems like he's going back and forth, or he hasn't made his intentions clear yet. But we should be looking at that later this week see if it comes to vote or not, or if it passes or not. So it's likely we'll see that, see whether the government is going to new elections or not, likely this week or next week. It also seems possible that the Likud, if they don't if they draw closer to the vote and they do not have enough support to pass the bill, that they'll actually postpone it till a later date. Guys, just south of me, about 30 minutes, is the community, the Jewish community of Ariel. Ariel is actually more like a city. There's like 30,000 residents, but they have a very large university, the Ariel University. And just this week, just yesterday, I believe, the Forum of Heads of Universities, International Forum here on Sunday, officially recognized the Ariel University in Samaria and accepted it as a full member of the Committee of University Heads. Now, this is like a decade-long boycott that this forum has been against the Ariel University. And as of now, there are only 8 academic institutions in Israel who are a part of this international committee of university heads, which including the Tel Aviv University, the Haifa University, Hebrew University, the Ben Gurion University, the Bar Ilan, the Weizmann Institute, and the Technion, all a part of this committee, and all those are outside in Israel proper, so to speak. The Ariel University is inside of Judea and Samaria, and that has been why they have been boycotted for so long. But thankfully, this boycott has ended, and they were just accepted and officially recognized by the Forum of Heads of Universities in the international forum here. MK Sharon Heskel had some good things to say about this, and as far as boycotts go, she is the chair of the Knesset Education, Cultural, and Sports Committee. She said in response to this decision that, quote, "It is inconceivable that we fight boycotts in the international arena and eventually discover that there is a declared boycott of Zionist institutions within the state of Israel. Ariel University was boycotted for years by the Committee of University Heads. I will not allow such things to take place in our country." And again, it is inconceivable that international communities, international organizations and forums, and even countries would boycott the state of Israel and boycott institutions and universities and even businesses and organizations inside of Israel. But unfortunately, that is what's happening. Thankfully, there's a win here. They've ended that boycott and officially recognized the Ariel University. Guys, the verse of the day is from Psalms 102, verse 15 and 16. It says, "So the nations shall fear the name of the Lord, and all the kings of the earth your glory. For the Lord will build up Zion, and he shall appear in his glory." Guys, no matter what's happening in the state of Israel with the government and everything, the Lord shall build up Zion. He promised it right here in Psalms. And we could be looking forward to that. Continue to pray for the state of Israel. Again, God is in control, and we know that it's our mission as Christians to stand unconditionally with the land and people of Israel. Guys, if you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms. Subscribe here on YouTube as well, and look for us on the podcast platforms Monday through Friday for more daily news from Israel. As Christians, it is our mission to stand unconditionally with the land and people of Israel. I'm Josiah Hilton, and this is the Israel Guys Daily.